Alright, so right now you are looking south. Yeah, it's almost straight south. Well, maybe, actually maybe a little more southwest. And you're looking downhill towards what is going crossway. Just beyond those snow-capped peaks is the Lillooet Lake. Alright, that's the direction you're looking right now from the Duffy Highway. And every single square patch of timber you see behind me at Mountain has had numerous Sasquatch sightings right behind me, in front of me, all around me. I'm basically on ground zero for sightings for these beings here. I'm not sure how many sightings go down in the wintertime. There's been a couple up on these peaks up here in front of me, directly west. But I'll tell you what, if you ever think that you want to have an up-close personal experience with one of these things, you just go climb into any one of these mountains, probably in the early fall, pack your pup tent, sleeping bag, and some food and start a fire. Don't bring a gun, and go disappear in those mountains by yourself for a few days if you really want that experience. It's funny how many people don't do that though, right? They'd rather go get a group of 6 people, go in somebody's backyard, bang on a tree, scream at night, and then run as soon as they hear something. Anyway, what do we got? Okay, here we go. Let's get right into it. Good evening, Steve. I've just had to pause in one of your videos so I could focus enough to hammer out a coherent email. It's been an unexpected and somewhat unusual pleasure to stumble upon your channel, onto which happened when I was doing some research on wolf and predation hunting control here in our beautiful province. Coincidentally, we happen to recreate and spend time in very similar areas. I wouldn't all be surprised if we pass each other on Highway 40, the Duffy, or somewhere up in the Peace region. To give you a bit of background, I'm turning 30 this year and have been part of hunting since before I could walk. I was brought up in a hunting family. My father was a very accomplished hunter and fisherman, and my uncle, a guide, trapper, cowboy, logger, rancher from the Caribou, who for the past decade has been eating and breathing and sleeping hardcore wolf/predation control. Good for him. I spent more days in the bush than I can count. Done some guiding for moose in west central BC, and always felt confident and competent being outdoors. I've been successful in many deer, elk, moose, and bear hunts, and been charged by more than one grizzly and attacked by 4 cougars at the same time. Doubt this all you want. I'll share the story later if you're interested. This sounds familiar. I think I may have read this, but I'm this far into it, I'll read it again anyway. The event that changed things for me and my outlook on being in remote parts of our wilderness here in BC happened. Oh, okay. All right, I understand this email. Because I found another email after this email, okay? And that's why I sought this out and read it again. So I'm going to continue reading this email again, and then we'll read the second email, which is just as interesting, all right? The event that changed things for me and my outlook on being in remote parts of our wilderness here in BC happened in September 2014. I was outside of Chetwynd, hunting with 3 other friends and my uncle. Happened to have already killed a large 6x7 bull elk and was still looking for a big bull moose, so he decided to join us for a few days. I appreciated it. Not only for his accompanying 3 good horses in case we needed help extracting, but he's very familiar with the area and could help us on the right foot. He knew the location of a fresh wallow and explained what he thought would be the best plan of attack. The extent of all this detail will make more sense later on in the story. The 4 of us woke up in the wall tent a few hours before sunup and discussed what our plans for the day were. I said I wanted to hit the wallow my uncle had told me about and see how fresh the sign was. And one of the guys said he would join me if it was all right. It made sense to split up in pairs, and the other 2 guys wanted to go in the opposite direction, so we agreed to do that and left camp in the dark after some breakfast and coffee. As we left, I could see my uncle was saddling a horse in the glow of the small fire. He had declined our offer to join the wall tent, opting for his usual bed of a sleeping bag on the ground beside the truck. It's thicker than shit in there. Go real slow and good luck, he said to the men and my partner as we walked past. The brush was thick, and the going was slow. And as we headed towards the area I thought the wallow would be, and that was okay as we were waiting for some light other than what our headlamps could offer. About 40 minutes of careful stalking in, we got into the shallow moss-covered gully that would lead to the wallow. No elk there, but lots of fresh sign, so we decided to head deeper into the bush. We shortly started to bump elk, never getting close enough to get a real good look, but I could get a glimpse of hide here and there, which kept us quietly moving forward after the herd. Hoping for an opening where we could see longer than 40 to 50 yards, we crept on. I'm sure you're familiar with how much deadfall there can be on the forest floor in this country, but after an hour or two of walking further in the direction of the elk, it became clear there was more deadfall than standing timber. The fallen pine and spruce were almost completely covered in thick, soft moss, which created a crisscross of tight ropes that could be traveled in almost eerie silence. You gotta love that though, eh? Except when you finally get your elk and you gotta pack the meat over top of that shit, which really sucks. The timber we were in now was far more sparse, so much of it was laying horizontally, which allowed sight lanes up to nearly 100 yards. I was out in front of blank, please don't use his name, and motioned him to stop and look at the cow in front of us about 60 yards away, and he nodded in acknowledgement. The cow looked uneasy and suddenly darted off directly away from us, and as she did, I caught more patches of tan hide in multiple directions around us, and I realized we'd made our way right among the herd. I wanted to get a good look and see how far they had gone and if there were any more around. I made my way towards where I'd seen the last animal. We came to an area that was more or less ringed by trees, and what I was looking down into was slightly lower in elevation and fairly open apart from a huge upturned tree, the roots of which had pulled up the moss floor with it. There's an effing dude down there. As soon as I got to the edge of the trees, I raised my rifle up and started scanning for what I'd hoped would be a big steaming bull elk. My eyes bugged out of my head. My eyes knew what they were seeing, but my rational brain told me that was incorrect as I looked through my scope at a massive, dark, man-shaped figure. I could clearly see a large man-shaped being from the waist up walking slowly across in front of me, head forward in what I'd have to call a sneaking, hunch-like creep. I lowered my rifle quickly and looked back at my friend in disbelief. "There's an effing dude down there," I whispered to him, still not being able to make any sense of what was taking place in front of me. My only rational thought was that must be my uncle coming to find us. He was the only one to know where we might be, and he must be wearing a big black jacket. We both often wear those dark brown leather Outback duster jackets when riding, and I just wasn't seeing this correctly. The light in this area was all filtered by the canopy of tall firs and blocked any direct sunlight, which made everything slightly fuzzy or hazy, so my eyes had to be playing tricks on me. I closed my eyes quickly and refocused on this huge dark figure, quartering towards me about 50 yards away, and realized that I was not, in fact, just another hunter, or a human being at all for that matter. As I'm still trying to process this and come to terms with what I'm looking at, my buddy makes his way beside me and indicate with a small head nod what I'm talking about. I remember a wave of confusion and disbelief filling my brain as we quietly crouched down and looked at each other in unison, each of us seeing each other's eyes doubling in size. I didn't know what to say, and even if I did, the last thing I wanted to do was make any sort of noise. "That's not an effing dude," he more mouthed than whispered to me. My head gently nodded a few times in agreement as I looked back towards what had us so bewildered. All I could now see was two massive legs, as thick as trees and covered in dark hair, about 40 yards away. The thing is now totally still, and I look at my partner, who points a finger towards the legs, and then his own, confirming we're both in agreement to what we're seeing. I was trying to stay level-headed, but my head was enthralled in a heavy battle with the reality unfolding in front of us. The pieces were coming together. The vision of the dark face I saw through my scope, the massive size, the thick black hair, and the lack of clothes. Holy shit, we're looking at an effing Sasquatch. I can't describe exactly the emotion I was feeling the strongest at this time. I was still confused. Actually, I think disbelief or shock would be more accurate, but also excited and curious, as well as uncertainty. What does one do when looking at the legs of a mythical creature within bow range? Well, I was hunting, and I was well armed, and thought if I was so certain of what I saw and that it wasn't a human, someone playing a prank on us, then the best way to prove what's in front of me would be to kill it. My rifle was ready to go with one in the chamber, and I slowly brought it up, and as quietly as possible flicked the safety off. Until that barely audible click of the safety falling forward, the thing we were so intently watching hadn't moved an inch, but suddenly, in a split second, it shifted, and both legs were now facing us directly. Out of the corner of my eye, I could tell my partner was seeing this too, but he gave me a tiny head nod telling me he understood what I was planning to do next. Through my scope, from the position I was crouched, I could only see from somewhere below the knee to around the beginning of its waist, so I knew I had to move to get a proper angle. Slowly and carefully as I could, my gun up, finger on the trigger and looking through the scope, I stood up. But as I did, a small twig snapped underneath my foot, and before I knew what was happening, the bush in front of us exploded. The being turned and bolted, moving faster than anything I'd ever seen before, and mowed through the brush and trees like a locomotive going down a track. Huge limbs and trees broke and cracked as it disappeared. It seemed like nothing hindered its departure. And to add to all the commotion, multiple patches of tan hide flashing made us aware, surprisingly enough, during this whole mostly silent standoff, the elk were in fact still all around us. At this point, we didn't know what to make of the situation at all. I was in some sort of denial, shock, and my partner was very shaken up, disturbed, and would probably be more accurate. At this point, we didn't know what to make of the situation at all. I was in some sort of denial, shock, and my partner was very shaken up, disturbed, would probably be more accurate. After sitting there for some time quietly discussing what we just encountered, we decided we should carefully and warily make our way back to the camp, which we did so uneventfully, not to say we were on high alert with guns loaded. So this is my story. I apologize for the length and detail, but I just felt it was the best way to put yourself in my boots that day. I've always wondered what would happen if I had to settle the crosshairs between its eyes and squeezed off around. I just don't know. Listening to you tell other people's stories, I do find mine somewhat unique for a few reasons, and missed out on the full Sasquatch experience. I never really experienced any feelings of dread or fear until maybe it turned and faced us directly, making it clear in my mind that it was very aware of us, and even then, I think it was maybe just some anxiety of the fate coming from the decision to shoot. I didn't smell anything strange. It never made any kind of noise until it tore off away from us. We didn't find any footprints and looked for tracks, but couldn't see any sign. I have a theory regarding this. I believe we interrupted its hunt. It was so focused on the elk that I didn't notice our presence right away, and that's why I was able to get such a good look at it creeping along. I'm no expert. I'm not a researcher. Before this experience, I probably would have put myself in the Joe Rogan camp of non-believers. I doubted my own eyes, even though I had someone I trust lifelong with right beside me telling me I wasn't crazy for seeing what I'd seen. We didn't tell the other guys in camp, although I did go over to my uncle and ask him directly if he had ever seen or experienced anything in the bush that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. He looked at me with a smile and said, "So you saw a Sasquatch, eh?" I didn't know if he was serious or not, but all I could do was nod my head. But fortunately, he wasn't any help at the time, and he only tried to convince me I saw a retarded bear walking around. I just know this isn't the case. There's actually more to this part, but I feel like this email is already too long. I know you're a busy guy, so if you have any interest, I'd be more than happy to share via email, phone, or over a beer one day. I'd also like to offer my help. Not sure what that looks like, but I saw one of your latest videos. You're thinking of getting some help reading and replying to emails. Not sure what it looks like. Not sure what that looks like, just throwing it out there. I drive a black, okay, blah, blah, blah. More personal stuff there. Go ahead and share all or any of the story. Sorry, I know it's long. You're welcome to use my first name. Leave out my last for professional reasons. Don't need my engineering colleagues thinking I'm some whack job. But if you could leave out my partner's name too, I'd appreciate it. Sincerely, Justin. Okay, man. I read this email already, right? But I did find more. Is this it? Oh, yeah, this has got to be it. All right, I found the other email, which I don't think I shared. And I'm going to do it now, and it might take a while. So, all right, here we go. Here's the second email that I guess we must have done a couple volleys. And I got this email, and I'm pretty sure I didn't share this one, so we'll tack it on here right now. All right, you guys? Steve, I really appreciate the reply. This whole thing boggles my mind. The problem is, once you've seen it, it doesn't matter whether you're a believer or not. I agree, it's a huge piss-off these things have been covered up. And if people don't think the government is actually working to hide this, they need to give their effing heads a shake. I don't even want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes. I guess when one of us eventually dumps one and hand delivers a severed head to a news station, we'll see. If it even makes it that far, it's probably been attempted before. That's all that was going through my head when I had my encounter. No one is ever going to believe I don't have a body. I don't know, tens of thousands of people can see a damn near the same thing over and over again, and yet we're all crazy. And or, quote, uneffable white dudes, to which I really think Joe Rogan was only referring to the researchers on TV running around the forest whooping and banging on trees, which doesn't seem so far off. You're bang on. I won't be able to go back out without this somewhere in my mind. Unfortunately, I get the feeling that somehow or another, these things are aware if you have knowledge of them. Does that make any sense? Potentially, once you've seen one, once you're way more likely to have another encounter. I have no idea. I've always been aware of that personal energy that we give off, especially evident around horses, as I'm sure you all know all too well. Stay calm, your horse stays calm. You freak out, panic, or are real on edge, the horse follows suit, which is so true. It works around cows like crazy too. In the bush, I've always focused my mind on being neutral, not excited, but not panicky, not angry or overly predatory, not focused on killing, just calm and neutral, and it seems to have noticeable effect on the wildlife around me. I'm pretty certain this must be connected to the creation of those hex suits. I'm sure you've heard of those. Either you know exactly what I'm talking about, or you'll think I'm off my rocker. I think it'll come naturally, but if or when I come across another one, I shall be sure to adopt your F right off mantra. I showed my buddy that was with me that day your video of a story. After discussing it with him, I have a few more details you might find interesting regarding the encounter. It happened about 3 kilometers west of the Pine, directly northeast from Chetwynd. I'd give you the pin, but it sounds like they're all over the whole Chetwynd Peace Country anyway. Yes, they are. Like, you wouldn't believe how common it is around there. It's crazy. After we saw whatever we saw, my buddy was really shaken up, and he told me he actually felt physically ill, like he was going to puke. I think I might have something to do with the adrenaline over blast, right? I've just had people bark before from too much adrenaline, or after being charged by a grizzly or something. When we got back to camp, we planned to go and hunt the other side of the Pine for a day or two. Leave these elk alone to cool down for a minute. I ended up dropping the 2 others off to set up a spike camp due to some truck trouble. I decided to head back towards town and cell reception, but my partner was still feeling sick and nauseous, so he jumped in with me. It was starting to get dark, and we just managed to get 1 bar of service before the truck died, bad alternator, and I called on an old friend that lived just out of town towards the mine. Great guy, hopped in his truck and came out to rescue us. We had never met him before, but after watching us pull the alternator out, he said something along the lines of my partner looking like he'd seen a ghost. We got in his truck and began to embarrassingly recollect the day's events. He surprised us both by telling us he believed us wholeheartedly and assured us we saw the real deal, and they had seen over 3 in his life, 2 in the Chetwynd area. Apparently 1 frequented that area up the pipeline behind their house, and 1 massive red-haired one on the island that made eye contact with him and roared so loud he almost shit his pants. Interesting turn of events that we end up hearing all this the very same day as our encounter. Somewhat eerily coincidental now. He didn't tell me too much about it, just that he had been walking downhill on a mossy slope at a pretty good pace when all of a sudden he described the feeling of complete and utter silence, and almost as if all the air around him was settling in a vacuum. Something very close to him made some movement and noise in the bush and began to walk toward him, and he was completely frozen in fear. He had a flashlight, but he said for some reason something was telling him not to use it. It came closer to him, pretty much completely in the open, but it was so dark that he could only make out the dark outline of a man-shaped being at least a foot or 1.5 feet taller than him. He said it came down to within 10 feet away from him and stopped there for at least 30 seconds. But he has no idea what it was and didn't want to speculate on what he even thought it was. Only that he was more terrified than he'd ever been of anything in his life. All he could feel was the dread and evil. Alright, so this went on to tell me the original emailer went on to tell me of sighting that he had, and I started to read this sighting, and then 3/4 through it he said, blah 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 blah. He said I could share this with you but didn't want it shared online. So I guess that means I can't share that story, so I guess I won't, even though there's no names shared. You can email me another day and correct me if you want on that. But it ended with you saying, a poor kid, seeing something that scared the life out of him, yet somehow being more scared of telling the 2 men who taught him everything he knew about hunting in the outdoors. I've hunted that area for the last 15 years, mostly on horse, and I can't say I've had any encounters. Not that I've had a clue what was going on if I did. I've had a few funny feelings out there and have had horses act up for no apparent reason, but who knows? It is what it is, and I'm certainly not one to make something out of nothing. Hopefully I continue hunting out there without uninvited visitors, hairy effers, interrupting my hunt. I'm still in partial denial about this whole topic and feel I need to know more about it, but I just kind of want to bury my head in the sand at the same time. I can't help think that the Sasquatch is just a tiny thread that, if pulled the right or wrong way, is going to unravel the blanket of our world as we know it. F all the lights and aliens and orbs, or hairy Fs. I just want to hunt and enjoy my province. Keep on fighting the good fight. I appreciate it, what you're doing, more than I can properly convey. Cheers. Justin. Yeah, no doubt, man. No doubt. You know, it's funny though. Obviously you emailed me, so you don't have it in you to stick your head in that sand hole. It's not going to happen. And mark my words, there's no frickin' way you're going hunting ever again without thinking about these things, or possibly even just traveling the province in the highway. There's no way. When I'm road tripping, doesn't matter where, even right here. There's sightings all around me right here. I'm looking nonstop, so I'm looking around talking to you guys. And once you see them, that's all she wrote. You are in the club of no return. And that club is the club that knows the truth. It's a crazy ride. It's a crazy ride. And for all you potential people who are listening to me share these emails, and you came here for the hunting, well, you do know I have the other channel now. I flipped it over to being called How to Hunt, putting all hunting angling content on that channel. But if you still find yourself slipping over here to see what's going on with that topic that annoys you, rest assured, there are thousands of A-type hunters just like you that know these things are real and are sharing their experiences here, and it's not going to stop, it's not going to go away. But anyway, you want to get off your chest, share my story at howtohunt.com, tell my story at howtohunt.com. We'll get to it, we'll share it.